Welcome to our 2015 Field Gear Loadout and Equipment Guide. I'm going to run through some of the gear that you'll need for the 2015 Field School in February. A lot of this stuff is recommendation from my own personal gear, but it will also include the equipment that we've listed for you in your logistics manual, which you've just received. I'm going to divide this video into 3 segments: essentials and the compulsory gear that you need to bring on the field school, clothing, and then accessories. Before I get into all of that, I just want to talk through some ideas for packing solutions. Because we're traveling out there on a boat, we're a little bit restricted for space. We recommend that you bring only one, what we might call a check-on piece, so your big bag for all your gear, and then one carry-on item, so perhaps a smaller backpack. In terms of the sort of bag you might want to look at for carrying all of your equipment, so your big bag, if you don't already have one, these duffel bags that I've got here, they make a great packing option. One thing you need to watch out for when you do select a bag to take out to the island is that it is fully sealed. You don't want any kind of excess pockets or openings, so please don't bring a big open bag or a bunch of shopping bags or anything like that, because we need to make sure that we comply with the Department of Conservation requirements, and that means that your bag must be sealed. In terms of a smaller bag, something that you might like to use with you in the field to carry all your stuff every day, and I do recommend that you do bring something to put your raincoat or sweater and drink bottle in, or a snack perhaps. You can bring something like this JanSport bag here. You probably use something similar for uni or even at school. These are perfectly okay to take out with you into the field, pretty basic, nothing too fancy with the straps. Or I personally use a much larger bag. This is a 32 litre pack. I like it because it's big enough to hold all my gear, and it also has a pretty decent harness on the back, so I use this for light day hiking as well. It just means I've got a little bit more support, so if I'm walking around all day surveying, I'm not going to strain my back if I'm carrying a lot of water with me or all of my wet weather gear. So those are some ideas for packing solutions. Of course, you can grab a bunch of stuff sacks or mesh bags to divvy up all of your gear, but you at least want to have something that's going to contain everything together. And please don't bring any kind of additional shopping bags or open plastic bags, anything like that, because they will not pass the dock check. Okay, now moving on to the essentials, compulsory gear list that we've given you. And on that list, you'll see that we have asked you to bring a sleeping bag, a pillow, a raincoat, a jumper or a sweater, torch or headlamp, or both if you like, a watch or a clock, something to keep the time and wake you up in the morning, some sturdy shoes, sunscreen, lip balm, insect repellent, hat, sunglasses, towel, field clothes, I'll get onto those in a moment, a drink bottle, and medication that you may require. So I'm going to go through each of these things in turn, talk about some good options to bring out with you, and give you some examples of the sorts of things that I take myself into the field. So let's start with sun protection, a really important part of archaeology, any kind of field work. You want to have something with you that is going to help protect you from the sun. Of course, you need to bring sunscreen with you, any good rated sunscreen. A really good website to look at is the consumer website. They have a great review on sunscreens for New Zealand conditions. And of course, you want to make sure that you bring something to protect your lips. So something like a SPF Blistex is a really great option. All archaeologists need a trusty hat, and I've got a few examples of different sorts of hats you might want to bring. You can pick up these kinds of hats from any good outdoors store, and again, you want to make sure that it has an SPF rating so that you're not going to get burnt. And you probably want to make sure you have something that has fairly decent brim. So here's an example here of a fairly wide brim hat. Nice stiff brim. It's got a little neck strap, which is really handy when it gets windy so it doesn't blow away. This is a more of a bucket style hat. It's really great because it's soft, so it packs down really well, and again has a nice strap on it to stop it blowing off. So I tend to wear either of these two when I'm out in the field. You might also feel a bit more comfortable wearing a cap. These are really good. They stay on your head pretty well in windy conditions, but one disadvantage of course is it doesn't give you full coverage, so you tend to get burn on the side of your face and on the back of your neck. So I tend to wear these more in perhaps rainy conditions or a little bit overcast where I'm not so concerned about getting sunburnt. But a hat is absolutely essential. Find something that is comfortable for you, and you may already have something that you wear if you spend a bit of time outside. Sunglasses, again, I recommend polarized lenses, and you don't need to go out and spend a huge amount of money if you don't already have some sunglasses that you're happy to wear in the field. I do recommend a wraparound design though, something that's pretty snug to your face, because if it does get windy you do tend to get dirt and dust coming into your eyes. So it's about sun protection, but you also want to protect yourself from other environmental factors, and wind is definitely one of those. I personally like having a little strap on my sunglasses, so when I take them off in the field, if I need to look at something and I don't want to have a polarized lens, then I like having it hanging off my neck because I tend to lose them otherwise. But again, that's personal preference, so if you feel you need that, then you can pick those up pretty cheaply. A decent case to keep your sunglasses in to protect them. Field work is pretty wearing on your equipment, so having something just to keep your glasses snug and protected when they're in your pack is also a good idea, and again you can pick these up anywhere for pretty cheap. Moving on, medication. This is obviously going to depend on whether or not you require any. I personally suffer from asthma sometimes, and it's usually worse in the field than it might be in a regular setting, so make sure that you have enough medication, whatever it is that you personally require. In terms of timekeeping, a good watch is pretty handy in the field. Most people these days use their phones as their alarm system, so of course you're welcome to use that, but bear in mind you might not be able to get access to a power point to charge that, so having a watch or a travel alarm clock that runs off batteries may be a good idea if you have trouble waking up in the morning, and sometimes after a few days of hard graft it can get pretty tough to get up early in the morning. Insect repellent, this is probably, of all the compulsory lists, this is probably the one that we tend to use the least out on Great Mercury. We're really lucky because we don't tend to get very many bugs out there, but if you're a person who tends to attract mosquitoes, you may wish to bring bug spray with you, and particularly if you're planning on spending a lot of time outside in the early evening, sitting out on the deck. People have been bitten from time to time, and I must admit in November was the first time I noticed mosquitoes inside the house where we stay, so that could be a good idea for this coming year since it has been quite wet leading up to Christmas. Other essentials include a flashlight or a headlamp or both if you're so inclined, and make sure you bring some batteries for that, so just any basic flashlight or torch can pick up. There's a Kathmandu one there, and then I've also got this little headlamp, not too expensive, you don't really need anything fancy. It's just in case you need to get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and the generator is off, we don't have any lights, so it just helps you get there without falling over everything. So those are pretty handy, and if we do have a power outage, quite useful as well. Okay, moving on to another really important part of that essentials list, compulsory list of gear, are your field shoes. I'm going to talk about some other footwear option in a second, but at the very least you need to bring some sturdy footwear with you. I've got a couple of options here. I would never take both of these into the field. I tend to wear this sort of boot. So I am a fan of full grain leather boots, but they are extremely heavy. So here I've got a pair that are a synthetic version. They are waterproof, they have Gore-Tex in them. You don't necessarily need that. A lot of people talk about the pros and cons of having Gore-Tex. On the one hand, it supposedly keeps your feet dry, but people do complain a lot that it takes a long time to dry, so you don't necessarily have to get Gore-Tex. but something that's going to provide you with good ankle support and has a fairly decent sturdy sole. So these are example of the field boots that I wear, but of course there's lots available on the market. So make sure you get something that's comfortable, and if you are getting new boots, make sure that you wear them in before you go out into the field, because you don't want to be getting blisters while you're out there. An alternative to an ankle boot are something that is lower cut, and you can even get something in between these two, a mid cut boot. These are lower cut, of course, but they also have a fairly decent sole on them, and they're pretty good. Probably the biggest thing I'd recommend if you are buying boots, you don't already have something to wear, would be to get something that has a toe guard, because you'll be kneeling down a lot when you're digging. You want something that's not going to wear too much on the toe. So I would say, apart from a sturdy sole and good foot support, you want something that's got a toe guard as well. So that's the feature to look out for. Okay, now moving on to some clothing items and sleepwear. You need to bring a towel with you to the island. We won't be providing you with a towel to use, so something, just a basic bath towel. I often throw in a little light quick drying towel just that I use to wash my face in the morning, but you can bring a full bath towel, and you may even want to add a beach towel as well, or if you're happy to use a bath towel for the beach as well, because there will be some opportunity for swimming during the field school. In terms of sleeping, you will need to bring a sleeping bag with you. This one I have here is a pretty decent 3-season down bag. You don't have to use a down bag. I like them because they pack away really small, so it has a small little stuff sack there. So that's really handy to take out into the field, and that's certainly enough for summertime in New Zealand. And if I am feeling cold at night, I'll just pop on a sweater or something. I also am quite fussy when it comes to sleeping bags, and I actually like sleeping with a sleep sack, so I just have a cotton one there, but you could use cotton or silk. It's basically a sheet that's been folded in half and sewn together. And then in addition to that, you'll need to bring a pillow with you and a pillowcase. This is a full-size regular pillow that one might use at home. You, of course, if you want to, could get a smaller size travel pillow, but whatever's going to be comfortable for you to sleep on for 2 weeks. You'll also need to bring a drink bottle or 2 drink bottles, depending on how much you feel you're going to drink, and you can probably count on drinking more than you might usually drink, because you'll be out in the sun all day and you'll probably get pretty thirsty. So a decent size Nalgene bottle. There's one that has a little sipper top, but you can use anything, plastic drink bottle that you want to use. I like these ones because they're durable and they last a long time, and you can chuck them in the dishwasher and reuse them again and again. Okay, now moving on to the essential clothing items for colder weather and wetter weather. We recommended that you bring some sort of fleece or woolen jumper. This is my preferred option. It's just a fleece hoodie that has a zip. I like it because it has a hood, so if it's windy I can kind of pop that on my head, and it gives me a bit of extra protection. If you want to go old school, here's a traditional lamb's wool fisherman's jumper, which of course is also very warm. I prefer the synthetic versions these days, but if you want to borrow gear off people, then you might come across some of the older style warm weather gear. In addition to at least one sweater or fleece, you also absolutely must bring a waterproof raincoat with you. There is no question about that. It's New Zealand, it's summer, so inevitably it will rain at some point during field school. When we say waterproof raincoat, we mean waterproof raincoat. So that includes something that has seam seals. Doesn't have to be Gore-Tex. This particular raincoat here is Gore-Tex. It doesn't have to be Gore-Tex, but it must be rated as waterproof. You have to be able to stay out in the rain for 8 hours a day if necessary. So please make sure that you get something, borrow, or if you're buying gear, you buy something that is really well rated and is not going to leave you saturated for the whole day. Please don't show up with a poncho or a light cheap raincoat. That just isn't going to cut it. You have to be able to stay out all day in the rain, so please make sure you, if you're going to spend money, that's the place to invest. In addition to a raincoat and a sweater, you might also like to bring something sort of in between. This is a wind fleece that I sometimes take out with me. It's not waterproof. It will shed a little bit of water, but it isn't waterproof, and it just cuts the wind. So if it's not raining but it's really windy, I'll sometimes wear this. But if you're gonna, if you want to cut down on weight, that's definitely not an essential item. Okay, so that pretty much covers all of the compulsory gear that you need to take on field school. Now I want to talk about some of the clothing options that you can bring with you, because we've said that you need to bring appropriate field clothing, and sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to know exactly what to bring if this is your first time doing field work. So I've put together a few things that I like to take with me out in the field and a few options, and I'll talk about each of those different options. So first things, you need to bring enough socks and underwear to last you for the whole trip. We can't guarantee that you'll be able to do laundry at all, so please make sure that you've got enough to last you the whole time. So socks, underwear for the whole 2 weeks. In terms of clothing that you might wear, I tend to like to cover up a lot when I'm working in the field. I find that it protects me from the sun. Sunscreen just doesn't cut it all of the time. And it also stops me getting really, really dirty when I'm digging. So there tends to be a lot of dirt flying around, sand, and covering yourself up means that you don't get dirt sticking to you. So you're a little bit cleaner at the end of the day. In terms of tops, I like to go for a shirt option, but a long sleeve top of some description would be fine as well. And I've got a couple of shirts here. They're Columbia shirts, I think, and they both have an SPF rating. The sun is pretty severe out there. It's severe in New Zealand in general, and we have had people who have worn just regular cotton shirts and they've actually been burnt through those shirts. So I do recommend investing in perhaps 1 or 2 shirts that have an SPF rating, and you can pick these up from any outdoors store. And I do recommend shopping the sales because you can get some pretty good discounts on these sorts of things from places like Kathmandu. So have a look around, make sure it's got an SPF rating, and at least you know you're going to be protected from the sun and something like that. So a couple of shirts that have that sort of rating are really good to have in the field. Of course, you could go for a t-shirt option, something like this vintage Arc Sock t-shirt, but bear in mind you are going to be then having to put sunscreen on your arms so that you don't get sunburnt. In terms of pants, lots of different options for pants, of course. Some people like to wear jeans in the field. That's perfectly fine. They do get a little bit hot in the summertime though, and if they get wet they tend to take a while to dry, a little bit heavy. And the other option, kind of other extreme, or the end of the spectrum, something like a very lightweight nylon pant, which are of course fantastic because they dry really fast. They're really lightweight, so they're not too hot, and you can sometimes get them with sort of zip off bottoms, so you can convert them into shorts. So it's kind of like a good 2-for-1 option there. And they, just generally good pants to walk around with in particular. The only drawback with the light nylon pant is that it's not very durable, so because in archaeology you're often kneeling down on the ground, they tend to wear out really quickly. I personally like to go for something in between. It's sort of a cotton nylon blend. Tends to dry fairly quickly, but it's just a little bit more durable and robust. So not quite a drill cotton, but getting close to it. Some people also like to wear shorts, so some sort of lightweight nylon shorts are also handy to have as well. But again, you're going to have to cover up with sunscreen and your legs will get dirty. But it really is personal preference. As I said, this is what I personally take into the field. You need to have something that you're comfortable with. But do bear in mind that with that severe sun, covering up is a really good idea. A couple of other things that you should take with you: pajamas, wearing at night time. You could also take some track pants or sort of comfy clothes that you might want to wear. after you've finished working in the field, and then a swimsuit of some description, because there will be opportunity to swim, and when it's a really hot day that's a really nice thing to do after work, just to cool down and kind of wash off. So don't forget to pack your togs. Alright, that's about it for clothing. I'm going to move on now to accessories, so some extra things that you might like to take with you to make life comfortable out on the island. I recommend that you bring a pair of jandals out with you. Really useful, sort of if you're just walking around after work outside, you might wish to pop on a pair of jandals, or if you're so inclined, something like a Tiva sandal are also quite handy to have. And some people even find that they wear these in the field, especially if you're doing something like survey. They're quite nice if it's really hot. An extra thing that we recommend that you bring is some rain pants. You don't need to spend a lot of money on rain pants. You can pick up some cheap nylon seam sealed ones from any outdoors store, even the warehouse probably. Maybe Kmart will have options of cheap rain pants. Really handy to keep in your backpack just in case the weather turns bad, and if you've got a decent raincoat, that's probably going to do 70% of the work, but if you want to protect your legs as well, rain pants are a really good option. And like I said, you don't need to spend a fortune on those. Spend it on the jacket and then buy yourself some cheap rain pants. Really useful to have with you. You can probably even find a friend or relative that might have a pair already, especially people that sort of are out doing winter sports will often have this sort of thing on hand, and they're a really good thing to try and borrow from somebody if you know anyone that does a lot of outdoor stuff. Other accessory items include toiletries. Of course, you need to bring stuff to wash yourself, so soap, shampoo, moisturizer, that sort of thing, toothbrush, toothpaste, all the usual stuff. You can bring out with you. As we've said in the manual, you will have access to bathroom facilities. We can't guarantee that you'll get a shower every day, but you will have some option to wash yourself at some point. However, if the water does run out, we get a dry season, we don't have much access to water, then some life-saving things to bring with you are wet wipes, so baby wipes, and hand sanitizer. So if we don't have water and you can't have a shower, these two things are really, really good to keep yourself somewhat clean. So I really do recommend those. Take those out with you. In any instance, they just help to keep yourself clean. You can also bring a little first aid. I take a little first aid with me. We of course have first aid kits out on the island. So things like plasters, like a spray Dettol, if you get a cut or a graze, it's sort of extra lip balm, sort of Vaseline or salve of some description are really nice to have out with you as well. If you're taking a phone, you might want to get a waterproof case for that if you're planning on having it out with you in the field. You don't need your phone with you in the field, but if you really feel like you need to stay in touch or keep on social media, then you might want to think about investing in a waterproof case just in case it does rain. You don't want your electronics getting wet. A little baggie with all your extra cables if you are bringing electronics with you, so camera cables, that sort of thing, is really useful just to keep that all together, because we have a lot of electronics, university electronics on the island, and things like USB cables get really confused. So having a little bag that you know is your stuff is really useful. Other optional bits that you might want to bring with you: pocket knife. I have my trusty Leatherman. You don't need to bring these things, of course, but I certainly have used my Leatherman on a number of occasions, different situations, to fix a variety of tools in the field. But you don't need to bring this, but if you do have a Swiss Army knife or something, you might want to bring that out with you. Sometimes comes in handy. Something like an iPod, if you like listening to music, and that may be on your phone as well, but please do bear in mind charging facilities are variable, so we do have power out there, but priority is given to the university equipment, so don't assume you'll be able to charge your phone up every day, so you won't always have access to that. You may also want to bring some light reading, some suggested reading there, and some treats if you are so inclined. We won't be entirely devoid of treats out on the island, but if you have something that you particularly like that makes you feel happy, then I do recommend bringing that out with you to snack on the island. That pretty much sums up all of the sorts of gear that I take into the field and the recommended gear that you bring out with you on field school. Please remember, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask us at all. We're happy to answer questions about field gear and equipment or life on the island. And do please feel free to check out the Dig Diaries blog. That'll give you some idea of what life is like out there, and you can follow us on Twitter as well. So I look forward to seeing all of you in a few weeks' time. Have a great holiday, stay safe, and we'll see you in the new year.